So I'd like to welcome back those of you who have attended our meetings in the past, and a special welcome to newcomers. For those of you who are not experienced Zoom users, if you wish to see closed captions, there is a button to click at the bottom of your screen. You can move the captions by putting your cursor on the caption box and moving it. If you keep the chat box open, you will avoid the orange chat icon popping up and covering the captions. If you prefer not to see the chat, you can drag and drop it to the side of your screen. Please also click on mute so that we don't hear background noises, such as sirens and dogs barking in your house or apartment. We are recording this. When the recording is ready, we will post a YouTube link on our website for the others who've missed it tonight. Many of you already know Katherine Bouton and Holly Cohen and are aware of how important they have been to the hearing loss community and to our chapter. Katherine has had progressive bilateral hearing loss since age 30. She received a cochlear implant in her left ear in 2009 and wears a hearing aid in her right. She preceded me as president of the New York City chapter and served on HLAA's National Board of Trustees from 2012 to 2020. In addition, she is the author of Shouting Won't Help, a memoir of adult onset hearing loss, and Smart Hearing, a guide to living with hearing loss, which I highly recommend. It's filled with information. Her blog, Smart Hearing, appears on her website and formerly appeared on AARP Online. Katherine's professional career included 2 decades as an editor of the New York Times, where her areas of expertise included the intersection of science, health, and social issues. Holly has also served as president of the chapter, and she's presented about hearing loss stigma at 4 HLAA national conventions, audiology conferences, and corporate venues. Her articles on hearing loss were featured in the Hearing Journal and Hearing Health magazine. In addition, Holly is one of the executive producers of the award-winning documentary about hearing loss, We Hear You. A link to the film can be found on the film website, and I believe that Holly has put that website, a link to that, in the chat box. Her prior experience includes being CEO of a small business and over 25 years as a career coach at global outplacement firms, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and the Center for Professional Development. As a trustee of the Theater Development Fund, TDF, she advocates through its theater accessibility programs, TAP, to provide access to theater for patrons with disabilities. In a moment, I will turn it over to Katherine and Holly. If you have questions or wish to share your own story, please use the raise hand button in the reactions tab on the bottom of the screen. We do want everyone to have an opportunity who wants to talk. So we are going to ask that when you are recognized, that you unmute yourself, and you will then have 2 minutes to ask your questions. So without further ado, Holly and Katherine, you will start, I guess. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, yes. It's great to see so many people here, especially people from other chapters and people from really far-flung around parts around the country. So every year, for as long as I've been in the chapter, we have had in January what we consider an interactive meeting, where the members who are there exchange information and ideas with each other. There's usually one moderator, sometimes 2. Last year, with COVID, we couldn't do that, and so we did it online, and it was good. It was not as good as being in person. It's much harder, really, to relate to people when you're speaking to boxes, but we're going to give it another try this year. We thought that uppermost in everyone's minds, probably, especially those of us with hearing loss, is the ongoing pandemic. It's been extremely difficult for people with hearing loss. And so we want to talk about what we've learned in this last, really now 2 years of the pandemic. We're going to divide the program into 3 parts. The first part is going to be some of the positive things that we have learned about hearing loss. I'm going to speak first. I'm going to talk for my 2 minutes. Holly's going to speak second for her 2 minutes. And then we're going to call on you, or John will call on you. And then do remember to unmute yourself. If everybody's waving at you, that means you're probably not unmuted. The second part will be challenges, what we've confronted and have had a lot more trouble overcoming. So that'll be the second part of this talk. And then the third part, if we get to it, will be what we've learned, what we can use out of this period going forward. I actually really think there's a lot of stuff that has been achieved during this time that's going to make life much more accessible for all of us with hearing loss. And I hope next year in January, we'll be having this meeting in person. So I'm going to start first. I call this the good, the bad, and the future. So I'm going to start first talking about the good for me. In the fall of 2019, I was invited to be on a big international panel on hearing loss. It was made up of scientists and public policy experts and academics from all over the world. And it was very prestigious. We were going to meet at Duke, which organized the conference, Singapore, Geneva, and Oxford. So I was very excited. I explained to everybody about my hearing loss. I was given cart captioning. I went to the meeting and it was awful. I really couldn't follow it. There were so many foreign accents that the cart captioner also couldn't follow it. When the formal parts of the meeting adjourned into, talk in the hallways where a lot of interesting and important conversation goes on, I couldn't understand a single word that anyone was saying. Meals were a nightmare. And at the end of that first meeting, I said to the organizers as I was leaving that I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do this. And they persuaded me to give it one more try. And then COVID happened. And so our February meeting in Singapore actually took place on Zoom. And there were captions for everything. And they were good captions. It was a 2-day meeting. I read every word that was said over those 2 days. But it was great for me. I was on a level playing field with the other people at this meeting. So that's probably the best thing that happened to me as a result of COVID. I went on to the next 3. We're still going strong. We're about to publish the report. But I think it was really the first time I realized how essential captions are for allowing me to participate in a group that is not primarily made up of people with hearing loss. So it was good. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly now. Your turn.
So first of all, great to see so many familiar faces, and also welcome to those of you that are new. Katherine and I did not share what each of us was going to say about the silver linings. And it turns out that mine also, focuses on the technology. So when I think about the silver lining, when COVID happened, that Zoom was new for all of us. And so the first thing that happened was many of you probably were on that first Zoom meeting where that gathered people from all over the country, HLAA members. That was actually on March 28th, 2020. So before that, we were all going to meetings, in person. We were seeing our families in person and friends in person. And Zoom has provided this opportunity for all of us to gather, and especially because of the captions. So to be able to see each other on the screen, to put it, if you so choose, to put the call on speaker view to get that close up so you can speech read as well as read the captions. It has just been such a gift. And then after that meeting, when a lot of the chapters started having their virtual meetings, including the New York City chapter, and we were lucky enough to continue to have captioning by Lauren Schechter. And so to be able to follow everything and read all the words. And then, for me, this opportunity arose to co-produce the documentary that John spoke about earlier. There was never has been a documentary that addresses the hearing loss experience. As we all know, there is a lot on the deaf experience, but not on our stories. So to be able to co-produce and appear in this documentary, and some of you may know that we made it with 2 iPhones and an Android. So it was iPhones that were put on tripods for the close-up and for the wide angle, and then the Android capturing the voices, the sound, and having the director and sound engineer zoom in from Argentina. This never would have happened had it not been for the pandemic and not been for the technology that allows it. So as we all continue to try to stay as safe as possible, and that means that we're going to be, doing this virtually for a while. We are very lucky, thank goodness, to have this technology, to also have a system in our country where it doesn't usually, stop, so that the Zoom is working and other technology. So now what we want to do is open up and hear from you. So if you would like to share a silver lining for you during this time, just raise your hand, and then John is going to, he'll call on you, and then please unmute yourself. And we look forward to hearing from you. So again, try to, if you can, keep your comments to about 2 minutes so that we can give everyone a chance to speak, and we excited to hear your stories. So John, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I'm seeing hands going up. The first one I see is Arlene Romoff. And please, if I interrupt you at 2 minutes, all of you, it's nothing personal. We really do just want to give everybody a chance. So Arlene, you're on.
Thank you. I'm Arlene Romoff. I'm from New Jersey, but I've always had one other foot planted in New York. So I know many of you here, and it's nice. I say hello, big shout out. Just to tell you about what is so significant about the pandemic, it really gives me chills. I had always wanted to do Torah study in my synagogue, and I had a degenerative hearing loss. So all the while I used hearing aids, there was no chance of me doing Torah study. It wasn't until I got my first cochlear implant that I tried it, not successfully. I tried putting some FMs in, but one cochlear implant just wasn't doing it. It was a round table discussion led by a rabbi with maybe 20 people, and no, they couldn't do it. Then I got my second cochlear implant and tried again, and yes, I could do it with 2 cochlear implants, but I had to sit next to the rabbi, and I couldn't really hear the people that were discussing all the way. But I was in there. I was getting enough to do it. Then came COVID and Zoom, and a savvy young rabbi in his 30s who could get everything going beautifully with Zoom. And everybody was facing me. They were all speaking into a microphone. The captioning, even though it wasn't Lauren, it still was helpful. And one of my colleagues always said, if Ollie's asking questions, she's understanding. Well, you should hear me now. I keep asking questions because I'm right in there. So let's just call this, it's a mitzvah that I could do a study because of the pandemic. So there you go.
Arlene, so happy for you to be able to do that. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
And you were right on 2 minutes exactly, so thank you for that. And I don't know if you can put your hand down on the bottom of your screen, but Carolyn is up next. So, good, unmute, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katherine Cannon. I'm affiliated with the Westchester chapter, but I started out in New York City, so I know some of you. Hello. I just wanted to share. I've been working. I'm a librarian at the Federal Court of Appeal in Lower Manhattan. I've been working from home for the most part of, well, over 2 years. I just started going back. I just wanted to say, because I was working from home and I upgraded my implant, my cochlear implant, to a Canto. So while I was working from home, I was also streaming from my iPad. And let me tell you, that constant streaming every day really helped my brain, and I can hear better. And it really helped with the math thing, you know, going into stores. I was really hearing. So that was a positive thing, you know, because I forced myself to do the streaming because I was home. And the other thing, of course, the technology. I'm all for technology with the Zoom meeting. It's been wonderful. And because of the Zoom meeting, I had the opportunity to join the New York State Association. And I'm proud to say I'm on the board for the New York State Association. And it's been a wonderful experience for me because it gave me a purpose, and it really helped me a lot.
Carolyn, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you so much for sharing.
Ruth?
Yeah.
I'm Ruth Bernstein, and many of you know me. I'm a member of the board. My COVID experience has been that I was able to go to art class, a different class, every day, 4 days out of the week. And the classes were in all different places, in New York, in Princeton. And on Friday, I go to the National Gallery in DC for a 1-hour discussion of one painting. I am wildly thankful for the technology that has made this possible.
Thank you, Ruth. And next we're going to hear from the very famous rapper and recording mogul, Jay-Z. Oh, it's a different Jay-Z, I'm sorry.
Hello, I will have you know, I was Jay-Z before he was Jay-Z.
Yes.
And then he took it, so I had to switch. So hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and to see you. I would just say the positives for me, if we're ignoring the horrors for a moment, but the positives in COVID for me have been many, many, many. And so I would say not only did it motivate tech companies to do better with this access and create better technology, it gave us a whole bunch of options for how we can do access. You know, in these meetings, I'm not just using Zoom, I'm using my phone captions. I do shared Google Docs. We have meetings, a whole group, I'll do a shared Google Doc. Everybody will jump in and do access with me. But then also, because it happened along with this racial reckoning, I think it brought a lot more awareness because people were saying, oh yes, we need to have more equality, diversity. Oh yeah, what about the disabled community? What about deaf people? What about hard of hearing people? And so that opened up possibilities to be on a lot of panels, which led to more opportunities and residencies and things like that. So it has really been great for me. The other thing I would say is it has made it clear that we don't have to meet in person. I can meet with people in other countries using these techniques. and I can understand so much better, and I can participate so much better. And so I'm now actively, this is changing the creative process, which we'll talk about in the going forward section. But those have been the bonuses and positives for me. Yay.
Thank you. Katherine, you're up.
I just wanted to answer you, Jay. As most of you probably know, last week the city council passed a bill to require open captions in movie theaters, which is a huge thing for us. And it happened kind of suddenly. We'd been advocating for it for a long time. Jerry Bergman was very involved with this. But I think that the kind of consciousness raising of the needs of people with hearing losses and the deaf, who also benefit from movie captions, has really taken hold on a lot of different areas. And I think the city council might not have taken this vote and passed this bill if it weren't for the fact that, you know, we've all been having to work very hard to make our needs known over this time. So just adding, Jay, to what you said. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you, Katherine. Are there other hands raised that I'm not seeing? Karen. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I'd like to address a slightly different aspect. As a former journalist, a former colleague of Katherine's and Denisha's, I'm used to typing a lot on the computer, and I don't always find Zoom helpful. Some people sometimes sit too far back from the computer, and I say, can you move closer to the microphone? But I find that I have spent the last 2 years with a couple of groups of former classmates from college, exchanging emails several times a day. And it's been fascinating. We've become better friends. And it's just something that's kept all of us interested and sane. And I can read the emails very easily. And I don't have to say what, I don't have to look for closed captions. I love email. And somehow it has worked during this COVID period. So thanks for the session, and hi to Katherine and Denisha. Bye.
Thank you. Adelaide?
I think that one of the best things that's happened to me during COVID is that yoga has gone on Zoom. So I'm getting 2 classes from Colorado and one, my local class. So I go 3 times a week and I don't have to commute. And also, I don't have to I usually had to hand I have a cochlear implant. I usually had to hand the teacher a little microphone, but I just lay that microphone down on my laptop and I hear perfectly. So it's really been easy. And we also have a family Zoom every Sunday. So, you know, I actually see more of my family now than I ever did before. So there's been good things about Zoom. Today I had a hard time with masks because now everybody in our building is back to N95s. And anyway, we'll talk about that later. So, okay, that's all. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Marilyn? Can you unmute? Thank you.
Hi. I don't know if this is in the right place, but I think it has made the general public aware of how frustrating it is not to be able to hear, because all of a sudden everybody is saying, no, it's so hard to understand people who are wearing masks. And I'm saying, welcome to my world, you know. And I think people have become, or I'm hoping that people have become a little more sensitive to the frustration that most of us feel every day. You know, I tell people, don't turn your back on me. I need to read your face. I'm not reading your lips, but I need to read I need to read the expressions. And I think hopefully that people have just learned what we go through. So that's it.
Thank you. Margaret? Margaret, was your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to unmute. I'm speaking to you from upstate New York. I belong to HLAA of Albany. And we've hosted Katherine, who very kindly was a speaker for us a few years ago, very generously. And I just want to say that as far as COVID, the masks were a challenge at first. I would get them all scrambled up in my bilateral hearing aids, and I've gotten pretty good at just hooking them over my ears without interfering with my aids. And for a while, I adapted them with little sliders so I could put one over my head and one around the back. And the top one was elastic, so I could have it hanging around my neck and then pull it up. And, I still use that sometimes. So it's easy. It doesn't interfere at all with my aids. But with COVID and captioning and Zooms, it's given me a new world. One of the gals mentioned yoga. And for me, yoga's been wonderful. Up here, my winter yoga in the evening meant going out, clearing snow off my car, going to yoga, getting very relaxed and comfortable, and coming back out to the parking lot to clear more snow off my car and go home. So it's been great. And additionally, when I do yoga at home, as she said, I don't have to worry about being close to the speaker. The iPad sound comes directly into my aids, direct streaming. And also with my, I have Meniere's disease and my balance is off a little bit. So if I fall over, nobody's going to see me. And the other thing that's been wonderful for me, I play a mountain dulcimer. I've been taking classes in mountain dulcimer, and I've been able to participate in virtual workshops with instructors who literally are from other parts of the country and other parts of the world. These are classes that I would not have been able to access otherwise. And it's been just so rewarding. I can practice, I can join a jam online. And as with yoga, if I have missteps, if I hit wrong notes, nobody's going to hear me. I miss being able to play in a group and play with others in harmony, but there are certainly pluses. I'm an outdoor person, and being able to be outdoors with friends as safely, health-wise, has been a boon with COVID.
Margaret,
Closed
I'm
up
sorry to
in-
do this. Everything you're saying is wonderful and interesting, but we
I'm
really
out
do
of
have to
time.
give someone else a chance.
Yep,
And I'm
thank
going to
you.
ask those of you who've already spoken, if you can lower your hands. I'm not exactly sure how you do that, but it's probably easy. And now we will go to Deborah. Unmute.
Hello.
Good.
This is my first time was speaking at this meeting. My name is Deborah Cerruti, and I live in New Jersey. It's mostly go to the Morris County group. Anyway, at the beginning of COVID, it was kind of fascinating because I was teaching yoga, and I ended up transitioning and started teaching it online, which was wonderful. But teaching is one thing, and going to classes is another. And I had pretty much stopped going to classes because I really couldn't hear, except for one teacher who knew my situation, and I would just do what I could. But once it went online, just relating to people again, not having masks and having it up front, seeing faces was wonderful. Friends of mine were mourning the fact that they couldn't go to the theater, and I was like, I couldn't go to the theater anyway. So I'm not missing anything. Movies, same thing. I wasn't able to hear, so I wasn't missing anything. And everybody else, those people who didn't need technology as much as I did, we're getting used to the idea of technology. So it's not just us, but it's other people who were hesitant to engage in technology that were forced to. So we kind of had an even keel there. And then, of course, I ended up getting a cochlear implant at some point, actually a year ago. And it's basically changed my life. Now I've got you in my head. When we talk like this, I can engage in yoga classes. I can take the classes. It has literally changed my life. The day after I had it, I went to a new dentist and I was hearing people through the mask, and it was just miraculous. So it's been quite an exciting year for me.
Thank you. So we have two more hands up, and I think after that we will move on to challenges. Miriam?
I'm mute. Am I audible? Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to add a footnote to some of the unintended consequences of the pandemic, including Zoom, for the broader population, not only people with disabilities, but many people who never participated in community meetings. And there's been a lot of research and articles about that have begun to participate more because of the timing, the schedule. Maybe they were in more remote areas and couldn't go to meetings beyond just a specific population. And when the pandemic seemed to be lessening and a lot of meetings went back to in person, people could not attend, and there was an who had begun to participate, and there was an outcry to make hybrid meetings permanent. And I was one of the people who testified about that. And during the course of the year, it became especially important to me personally. About a year ago, I had unsuccessful back surgery, and I'm not as ambulatory as I was right now. I'm lying down on my sofa. I can't sit up very long. I can't be up very long. And it became increasingly important to me to do some of the advocacy with disability. The subway, I've been very involved with the elevators, going to community board meetings. So for many, it expanded the world of people who participate in issues that affect their lives that they weren't participating before. And I don't know the final decision in New York for making hybrid meetings permanent, because it was supposed to be through early January, though I think the new governor has been receptive to those issues, and also, concerned about the spread of the new virus. So they probably will be, though I haven't really read anything. Yeah.
Miriam, sorry to interrupt you, but we do have to move on. I think in New York that there's a very real chance that we do want to continue having hybrid meetings, even when we are able to go back in person, though we do look forward to that day. David, and then we will move on.
Hi, I was just raising my hand as a proxy for Russell Mishaloff, who in chat says he was trying to raise his hand but couldn't for some reason.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Well, Russell.
Well, thank you. I don't know what the problem was. I electronically raised my hand and then by itself it kept going off. I would just add something, which is akin to what's already been said. I'm in DC. I'm in the DC chapter. I'm formerly president and I'm now the program chairman. It's enabled the fact that our programs are now virtual enables us, I think, to access speakers from all over. And that was always a major limitation, and I think our meetings are much more informative, and we're able to attract, some really fine people, and, who don't live anywhere near the area, and we could not afford to bring in, for in-person meetings. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Russell. You actually saved me. I was going to make the same comment that for our chapter, we've been able to invite people to speak from outside of New York without having to worry about expenses. It's expanded our pool of speakers, and it's enormously expanded our pool of people who come to our meetings. I know that I reconnected with someone I went to high school who's a piccolo player in New Zealand who came to our last meeting and then contacted me on Facebook. And we've had people from all over the world coming to our meetings, and that's been great, and we hope they will continue to in the future. So that said, let's turn to challenges.
Okay, so I'm gonna kick that off. And first, though, I do want to say that we were all talking about some of these advantages to Zoom, and I think one of them was tonight seeing the smiles as everyone was talking about how the pandemic has impacted them like in a positive way, and some of the silver linings, as you talked about, understanding better on the screen and classes and interest in the arts and taking yoga and the family Zooms. There was huge smiles on all of your faces. So that was really, really nice to see. So now we're going to turn to challenges and, challenges that each one of you have faced, how you've overcome it, or if not, but to hear what has been most challenging for you. And I'm going to kick it off with mine, which is going to be no surprise, and it's about the masks and trying to hear through masks, especially out in public, depending on, the pitch of the voice, which always makes it different. There are some people I find I can hear really, really well with. Other people I cannot hear at all. It has certainly encouraged me. I mean, we all do this, but even more so, introducing myself as someone with hearing loss, and that I really struggle to hear with the masks. Sometimes someone, will step back, pull their mask down, which of course makes it much easier. In some situations, I've used Otter, and I explain what Otter is. So it's always another opportunity to show different accessibilities, for those of us that have hearing loss. But the masks have been challenging. And now, as Adelaide talked about, the N95s coming back. So this is not going away anytime soon. I think we're going to be wearing masks, for quite a while. So the challenge is why this forum is so wonderful, because we can see each other, we can see the facial expressions, we can see the captioning makes such a difference. But again, when we are out, it's more challenging. So I'd be interested to hear, and I am interested to hear, as we all are, from you. What has been the biggest challenge during the pandemic, and how you've been able to overcome it, or how you continue to live with it. So raise your hand if you would like to share.
Don't forget me.
Katherine, go.
Okay, Katherine, I'm sorry. Katherine, I meant to turn it over to you. And
I know
now,
you run these
Katherine.
meetings, Holly. Well, I was going to talk about a difficulty I had with masks that I was not able to overcome. But I don't think I want to, because I think everybody has so many positive things to say that I'd rather talk about one that I did overcome. So like everybody else, I had trouble. I have a cochlear implant and a hearing aid. And like everybody else, every time I put the mask on, the cochlear implant would get tangled up, the hearing aid would get tangled up. And I actually lost a cochlear implant in the snow after it got tangled up with my hearing aid, and by a miracle I got it back. But I was at my audiologist early or last year, I guess, in the spring, and she had a headband on, and on the outside of the headband there were two little buttons, and her mask came around and looped around the buttons. And I said, "Where did you get that?" And she said, "Oh, you can buy them online." So now I have an entire wardrobe of headbands with little buttons on them, and they're very inexpensive, and I'd be happy to tell anybody how to find them if they want. So I've actually done part 2 and 3 here, the obstacle and how to overcome it. But I'd like to hear from other people how. I think masks has been the biggest thing for all of us, but there are probably other issues that people have confronted too. So, John,
Okay. Thank you, Katherine. Rosalia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosalia. I'm just so happy to be here with all of you. This is my first meeting. I actually recognize Holly because I did a couple of the workshops, I guess they were called in the beginning with HLAA. I think it was back last year sometime, and I really enjoyed those because honestly, it felt for the first time for me that I didn't feel alone. have felt very alone during this pandemic, struggling with the mask. And my biggest challenge is honestly the frustration because people do not understand that I can't hear it. I'll go to the supermarket and the lady who's taking the cold cut order, I can't hear her. So I'll say, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And she'll roll her eyes at me. And then sometimes I wind up getting so frustrated that not that I scream at them, but I say, I'm hearing impaired and I cannot hear you. Can you please back away and lower your mask so I can hear you? And then finally they do. But oftentimes what I find is that if I say I'm hearing impaired, they'll just continue talking and not understand me. And it's just really, really frustrating for me, but I'm really grateful that I'm part of this, that I'm here at this meeting. And I do feel much less alone now, but I have isolated a lot because of this pandemic, because every time I go out, no matter where I am, there's always a challenge because I can't hear with the mask. So hopefully, the masks will go away one day. But as far as Zoom goes, I need Zoom like in every aspect of my life because I can finally hear everything and I never miss anything, which is like so great. But thanks so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Rosalia. Ruth?
My biggest challenge has been to get people to caption events. I've decided I'm going to change my middle name and make it Captions. But I got a couple of notices today, one from the United Jewish Appeal. They're doing an event and they don't mention captions. I got one from a disability group that doesn't mention captions. Needless to say, I say the same thing over and over again, which is, I am profoundly hard of hearing. I need CART or AI captions. The only way you're going to get them is to ask and just make a pest of yourself, because you are not the only one who needs the captions. And very often people say, oh, wow, I didn't know those things existed. So I'm just, don't give up. That's, keep at it. That's it, John.
Thank you, Ruth. You're a role model for all of us, and the HLAA concept of being assertive. Okay, we're back to Jay-Z.
I don't think he
Unmute yourself,
recognized
Jay.
himself.
Okay.
Hi, the time, okay. It's so great to hear from you all and to see you, Ruth. And so I would say, obviously, I would add to the whole issue with the masks, which is there was a whole lot of aggression at the beginning, people wearing masks, but people very frustrated. And all, as someone who's profoundly deaf, all I'm getting these really angry eyes, and people's masks would be puffing out. And I would not know if they are talking to me, if they're yelling or what. And so, Rosalie, I totally understand your experience there with trying to get people to communicate with you. And what I found was, if I say, I can't hear you, if I say I'm hard of hearing, if I talk, and they talk back. And so my solution was to stop talking. And I just use these apps on my phone that I am deaf, please gesture. And I go out and I don't talk at all. And I go to the grocery store and I hold my phone And if they ask me a question, they type it back to me, and then I wait and I type my answer. And yes, it's slower, but wow, is my life so much more calm. Because if you embrace this silence and you walk outside, it's just, okay, there's all these masks. I don't know what they're saying. I don't need to know what they're saying. I go in the store, I hold up my phone, and I can do it. I'd say the second challenge, of course, is the Zoom fatigue, because we're all doing this so much and we're so focused and we don't want to miss a word. And so that was very, very exhausting. And I thought I had eye problems, which it turned out I did have eye problems, but it's still Zoom fatigue. And so what I found really helpful is, like here on the captions today, we have Lauren captioning here, but you can open up the full transcript on the side. And what that does is it allows you to take a break, give yourself a break, so you don't have to be staring at every single word and waiting on every word. So those are some of the ways that I've solved some of these problems, but it was terrifying at the beginning because it felt like the Hunger Games.
Thank you, Jay. Dana?
Oh, hello, everyone. I haven't been coming to meeting for a while, but here I am. And my name's Dana, and I have both the vision and hearing loss. I'm doing great on Zoom. I love it. I love everything. But the person I wanted to talk about is my 84-year-old mother who had a stroke and is now losing her hearing. So she can't use Zoom. She can't use any computers. And I have a cochlear implant. I've been out of touch with hearing aids. I'm coming back here, how to get my mother a hearing aid. When she uses a walker, can't get around. And all the senior centers were closed. There's no place for her to go. People who are elderly are isolated. She went to the hospital twice. Only one person's allowed to come in. It's been a nightmare. So for seniors who are aging and can't use computers and have all kinds of disabilities, no senior centers to go to, this has been a real crisis. So I just want to speak up for them.
Thank you, Dana. Are there more hands-on challenges? If not, I'm gonna just throw my 2 cents in. Many of you may know I got a cochlear implant in March, and I had arranged beforehand with the surgeon, Dr. Alexiadis, who is, in addition to being a wonderful surgeon, is a mensch. I'd arranged to have captioning in the area I was waiting in before surgery. And I showed up and there was no captioning there. And he called the powers that be at Weill Cornell, and they, for whatever reasons, had canceled it. And he basically gave them hell, so that by the time I was in recovery, there was captioning, there was CART, and that that then at my activation, Lauren was there captioning for me. But the issue in the waiting room was really a problem, somewhat of a problem for me. I was also kind of amused by the sign they had up in there, which was telling doctors to speak softly, to whisper, so that because of privacy issues. And I'm there, in a place where I'm getting a cochlear implant, and they're telling everybody to whisper. There was something kind of wrong about that. So that's my story. Karen, you wanted to have something else to say? Go.
Hi, thanks. Glad you got some help there. I used to take a fitness class with 60 or 70 people, and the teacher liked to play music, and she liked to play it loud, and I couldn't hear her over the music. I asked her if she would turn it down or turn it off, and she kept saying, "Turn up your computer." And I tried to explain to her. My solution in the end, because she would not make any changes, was to drop her class. I take other classes now where there's no music. Other than going to the people, her bosses, which I didn't do, and I still could, I just wonder if I didn't see any way to separate the music from her voice. It all came in one stream, and I tried to explain that to her. She refused to understand. Anyway, that was a challenge, and the only way I found to solve it was to stop taking her class.
Well, it sounds like you found a solution, but ideally you shouldn't have to do that. So, Katherine?
Am I muted? Yeah, I want to say, in HLAA, we always try to find solutions. And I see in the chat that Ruth is suggesting, various handheld smartphone captioning apps. I do think, and what I was going to talk about before was a situation that I was in where there are some times when there's really absolutely nothing you can do. And my situation was that my husband was sick last year and he was having chemotherapy, and it was during the worst early days of COVID. So everyone, was just completely fanatical about wearing their masks. And there was also a lot of noise because the chemotherapy suite is a big open room and there's a lot of machines and beeping and a lot of people talking. I could not understand a word that was said. My husband's chemotherapy took 6 to 8 hours. I couldn't have a cart operator sitting there with me for the, maybe 25 minutes of talk spaced over the day that I might want to hear. My Otter AI didn't work because there was too much noise in the room for Otter to pick up the voice of the nurse speaking behind her mask. There was no solution. So I think sometimes we have to, just accept that. And I am saying this because I think other people have probably also ran into situations where they really couldn't do anything. And, it's not the HLAA way to just give up, but sometimes you have to. So I'm sorry to say that. But I also just want to say that if it's happened to any of you, it's completely understandable and it's not your fault. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you, Katherine. Ruth? Ruth, is your hand raised again?
Katherine, my bottom line is pencil and paper when I'm stuck. The other thing that works is a chalkboard, or you remember those magic?
No, but Ruth, I couldn't hear one word. I did not know what the conversation was about. It wasn't that I was missing, the name of a medication. I just couldn't follow the conversation. And I occasionally would ask the nurse if she would go with me into a separate room, and then we would talk in a separate room. But it was just an ongoing situation that was too difficult to handle.
It was very frustrating, I am sure.
No. So I just think people need to know that, we can't always all do it all the time. We're pretty heroic, most of us, but we can't always do it.
Katherine and Holly, can I ask you, I know you want to do a section on the future. Do we need to move on to that now? Because there are still a couple of hands raised.
I would say let's finish this part, and then
Okay.
I have something I want to say about the future, and I'm sure other people do too.
Okay,
So.
well, there are two hands up. Holly, you go.
I was just going to add, I was thinking about when Karen was talking about it at the gym and the music and it being so loud, and it reminded me it's another example of when someone doesn't experience something like the people. I remember one time I went to one spin class in a gym, and the music was so loud. I mean, it was ridiculously loud. And I couldn't believe that people were actually in that room and staying in the room as this music was blasting. And then I thought, they just don't know, they just don't know. So we try the best we can to raise awareness. And that's sometimes, or it's like in a noisy restaurant. And maybe some of you do this. I will ask if they can just lower the volume. And often they will. But I think for people that, again, as we know, if you don't have hearing loss, you just don't get it. And so they can't, like with any other loss, you just can't understand the impact. But at least you tried, Karen. And I think also just to Catherine's point too, you try, it doesn't always work. But what you hope is that a little bit of awareness has been raised every time we speak up. And Ruth, she's still on the call, she probably would win the prize for the number of meetings that she has had captioned over the years, because she asks, and then so often they say yes, but it's because you ask. And that's one of the many lessons that you've taught us. So now moving on to the final section. Katherine, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Actually, you just gave me the perfect launching point, because I think that one of the things that I've learned, and I think that many other people have, is exactly what you just said. If you ask, sometimes you'll get what you ask for. And I think up until the pandemic, I retained some of my shyness about pushing myself forward and saying, could you please talk more slowly? Could you please look at me when you talk? Could I please have captions? I'll never hesitate again. I think that I've learned that I have to speak up for myself, and that it's very important. And a second thing for me, and I'm sure this is also true for other people, is I'm kind of a technophobe. But boy, I have mastered so many technologies in the past 2 years, and it's really gratifying, and it adds also to self-confidence. So those are two things that I think will really continue to work as we go forward for me.
So do you want to move on to the next section now?
Well, that is the next section.
Yeah, the next section is basically what have you learned and to bring forward, again, because the pandemic continues, so much of the way our lives have changed so much. I mean, our lives, the way we were living them 2 years ago, it's very different how we're living them now. So as we go forward, and as some of it remains the same, there will be some changes, what have we learned and how can we, move forward? And I think, speaking for myself, Katherine, to your point about technology, one of the things that I've learned is to be more patient with it. I think I would like to think that I'll just get it, like I'll get it right away. And that doesn't always happen. So I find myself Googling, how do you, whatever it might be. But that helps. And I think because there's been so much more technology that we have been involved with since the pandemic, it is that opportunity, but it takes time. And so I think also lesson is, to be patient, and that it does evolve. So who else would like to? John, do you want to call?
Okay, Rosalia's hand is up.
Hi, Rosalia again. Thank you so much, Katherine, for saying that about, having reservations about speaking about our hearing loss. I used to be very shy and somewhat embarrassed to talk about my disability, because it is an invisible disability. But what I've come to learn over the years, I've had hearing loss for over 20 years now, is that I'm my biggest advocate, because if I don't speak up, nobody will. And I find that most oftentimes that when I do speak up, people respond to that. If it's something that I need, my needs are not being met, they do take it into consideration. And I have noticed a big change in that regard. So I just wanted to say that. But my question is about technology, if anyone here can address this. So I've been wearing hearing aids for over 20 years, and the technology has definitely improved over the 20 years. Now my hearing aids, I stream my phone, my music right to my hearing aids. I hear crystal clear. But my question is, do you think at some point hearing aids, I wear, I guess, I don't even know what they're called, the ones behind the ear, but do you think at one point they will ever be water resistant. So I'm a runner, and when I run, I cannot wear the hearing aids because if I wear them, they get wet and they get clogged and then they don't work. So I am forced to, when I do races, not wear my hearing aids, and it's scary. I'm fortunate that I run with people with me. I'm in a running group, so I run with people that understand that can help me out, but I'm always fearful that in an emergency situation, I won't be able to hear. And I know there's a lot of advances when it comes to technology, but do you think that's something that will be addressed? I mean, what do athletes do that are hearing impaired? They obviously sweat as much as I do when I'm running. So how do they
Rosalia?
address it? Yes.
Rosalie, we're actually out of time for you, and that's a very interesting question. I'm going to go out of order a little bit and skip to Barbara Weinstein, whose hand is raised, who is a professor of audiology at the Graduate Center, a former professional advisor to the chapter. And maybe Barbara, can you comment on that question?
Well, I can say that, thank you very much, John. And a good question, Rosalia. There are some of the hearing aids are water resistant, so it depends upon the manufacturer. So some companies some of the manufacturers do ensure that the hearing aids are water resistant. So that's something that you should definitely address with your audiologist. But I wanted to comment on the fact that people are not sensitive when individuals have hearing loss, and they're not sensitive to the fact that people have hearing loss. And I think this raises the whole issue of stigma. And I think the hearing aid manufacturers and even the cochlear implant manufacturers kind of are in cahoots, not in cahoots, but are guilty. So where hearing aids are made to be hidden, cochlear implants are made to be hidden, so that if people can't see that people have hearing loss, they're not going to be able to respect and modify their behavior. By our continuing to hide the fact that we have a hearing aid or an implant, it's kind of it's a catch-22, because we have to become more visible about the hearing problem. And now, especially with the masks, more and more people are having hearing difficulties. So I think that the manufacturers are making hearing aids more invisible. They want to make sure that they're not visible. They're camouflaged with the hair, the implants as well. And I think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I feel like for glasses, you're proud to wear glasses that show that you have a visual issue. And by continuing to wear hearing aids or cochlear implants that are not visible, I think this stigma, we're kind of continuing with the stigma, which is really problematic. And I think that, I mean, I was involved with a woman who was an artist, and she was an advocate for hearing impairment, and she developed a wonderful cochlea, a pin, a cochlea, and she wore it proudly, and she wanted everybody to wear it proudly to show, I have hearing difficulty, modify your behavior. And I think this is another public health issue, as with COVID, and I think that people need to be more sensitized. More and more people are experiencing hearing difficulties, and we have to make it. I know that people want to hide it still, but I think we have to make it more visible, and then people will modify the behavior. But if you don't see that there's an assist for hearing, then people are not going to modify the behavior. That's just my own bias.
Thank you for those comments, Barbara. I'm also going to put a plug in for our May meeting, where Barbara will be moderating a discussion with two young audiologists, audiology students of hers. And I think that should be a very interesting meeting. I am going to go a little out of order again, because there's some people who have not spoken. But before I do that, I would like Ruth to show her cochlear implant. Can people see your cochlear implant, Ruth? There's no hiding.
That's awesome, Ruth. Okay, Ruth. Yes.
So
nice.
Thank you for that, Ruth. And now I will skip to Peggy. You're muted, Peggy. You're muted. Peggy, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I know by now. So I'm actually speaking to you from New Orleans, which is really a wonderful city, and it's also sometimes like a third world country because we don't have internet today. So I'm actually using my phone for this call. The most important lesson I think I've gotten from the pandemic is that I need to keep using all of the amazing tools and strategies and support examples that I get from my hearing loss friends to hear as best I can, but that the goal something has flipped for me. The goal is no longer to hear, it's to have well-being. And somehow the pandemic has made well-being, my well-being, and that of the people that I love, my friends and my family, transcend my ability to hear them. So it's not either or, it's both. And well-being is sort of edging out the hearing thing for me. It's also because I'm getting older. I had my 74th birthday in November. Start thinking of mortality once you hit your mid-70s. But I think the pandemic has really sort of hurried this process along for me, and it feels really good. I'd like to also say one more thing about sweating with hearing aids. There's a guy who is a member of the Boston chapter. I live in Boston most of the year, and he runs and he sweats a lot. And he discovered little sweatbands that you can buy to put on your hearing aid. So Harris Communications carries them if you just Google it. They're pretty expensive, actually. I got some for kayaking one summer, but I think they work pretty well. And then finally, to Barbara's point, I was at the grocery store today, and I was in an aisle that was sort of narrow, and I was clogging the traffic unwittingly. And there was a woman behind me who kept saying, "Will you please move?" And of course, I didn't hear her because she was behind me, but she saw my implant is not at all hidden. And I am quite certain that seeing my implant sort of evoked a kind of compassion. I could see it in her face. She was very kind to me. And so anyway, I think it's absolutely true that the more we show it, the more people will know. And I think that it's important to try to track those times.
Peggy, I think those are important comments, but we're really running out of time, and there's at least a couple of people who haven't had a chance tonight. Char.
I'm just amazed that I remember what I was going to say because I kept forgetting, but I just want to say that what's so interesting to me during this pandemic is I didn't realize how much my technique in explaining my hearing loss had a lot to do with a smile on my face. So now with a mask on, and I'm going to tell them I have a hearing loss, I can't smile at them, you know? And I don't know how I come across how to smile with my voice so they don't feel intimidated. But this bringing up the whole thing, I've always known that people who can hear don't understand not hearing. But I was at the dentist, the dental technician. I explained many times I have a cochlear implant. He's talking to me. I said, you know, I lip read, so I'm going to have to see your lips. He pulled the mask under his nose. So just his nose. And it's like, I don't know where to go with that. You know, I don't know how not to embarrass him or, you know, that sort of thing. But my reliance, and I come from a theater background, is my communication is a visual thing. It's not just being able to hear, to see the eyes. I need to see the whole face. I need people to see my whole face. So this has been very, very challenging for me. How do I communicate my feelings or what I need if I can't show them my smile? So that's all I had to say about that.
Thank you for that. Tony, you haven't had a chance yet tonight.
Thank you. I just have to say I have a terrible cough, so I'm going to try and get through this and just say something briefly. But for the future, I want to address the issue of telehealth. I don't think it's going away. I was very resistive to having telehealth appointments because I just felt like I was getting gypped somehow by not meeting face to face with the doctor. But I have to say, in the situations I've used it for, maybe if it were something more physical, but for the appointments I've had, it's been wonderful. And I would encourage people to try it. First of all, the doctor is not masked. Their face is closer to you, so you can speech read. It's just calmer. There aren't people walking in and out of the doctor's office. Problem is, I've always asked for captions and it takes time, but I've always gotten them one way or the other. You know, we can use Otter or something else next to our laptops to read, but we should not have to do that. So another great thing about us meeting collectively is that we can encourage ourselves and each other that every time we have a telehealth appointment or any appointment, it goes back to the ask. Just say, I'm going to need captions. If you have Zoom, ask someone how to turn them on. Whatever it is, make the suggestions. And I think that this is something that we can all work on. Again, they don't know we can't hear. People don't understand what that's like, but they don't know that we're out there because we're not speaking up. So medical is so critical. So I encourage everyone for telehealth, for any kind of medical situation, to ask for whatever access you're entitled to have. CART, you're entitled to have whatever you need. That's the law. So just ask. And back to, I'm sorry, I'm so terrible with people's names, but the woman that just spoke, I totally agree about a smile. It totally tempers your message. So you know what? Step back. Pull your mask down for a second and just smile at them, you know, or give them a thumbs up or something. It really does work. And I think it's great that you mentioned that. So I think there's a lot of potential for us to work together to fix some of these things if we speak up collectively and individually. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. You made it. But before we go on, I'm going to ask those of you who've already spoken to please lower your hands. There's probably a way to do that where the same way you raise them. We have only time for maybe one or two more. I'm going to Arlene, I think. Oh, you you've lowered your hand. Okay. Were you waiting to speak, Arlene? You're muted.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yes. I moved the captions
Before you
over.
speak, I just want to say
Yeah,
that
I just wanted to say that as we spoke before about this creating isolation, especially if you live alone, and that wasn't good with not being somebody to pick up the phone and call people. So part of this pandemic has gotten my courage. I can use the phone. I actually do quite well, but you know, 30-something years of being afraid of that friggin' phone, I'm not a phoner, but now I have become a phoner. I push myself and it's fine. It's fine. I call my sister, I call my friend, we have her every week. And that is a change in me because, you know, who of us really likes that phone? I do really do okay. So that has changed my behavior and just get the courage up to do it. I mean, of course, it's a very individual thing, but if you can, just let those old fears die hard. Goodbye. I phone my friends now.
Thank you, Arlene. Before we move on, I also want to recommend, years ago, I read a book that Arlene wrote called Here Again, and I thought it was a terrific book. So
I appreciate that.
I think we have time
There's
for
the next one also, you know.
Okay, well, I'll have to look for that one.
Yeah, listening closely about bilateral.
Okay, I will look for that one. Jay has his hand up. Jay?
Yeah, sorry if I'm speaking too often here. I just wanted to drop a few little points in here. We were speaking before about the medical community, how difficult it is in the medical community. And that was something I was facing quite a bit. So I say in terms of what we bring forward, we not just have to advocate for ourselves, but advocate for the tools that we want other people to use. And right now, the medical community is still resistant to using captioning apps and using phone apps. So we're going to have to advocate for that. But the good news is that these apps are going to start working offline, because right now, like Catherine's situation, other situations, they stopped working, and then you can't communicate. I would say the last point I would like to make is, as things open up, we should be clear that what we need, because the hybrid meetings, sometimes they're saying we're going to do a hybrid meeting, and to them that might just mean they're going to put a laptop in the corner, and it's not going to work as well as this if the microphones aren't close, if the captioning isn't working. So we won't be able to participate. So I think we're going to have to keep advocating that these things, these great gifts we have now, are maintained, and we can continue to use them going forward. That's my last point. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Jay. Mary Whalen?
Yes, hi. I was hospitalized for the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, and I think that a medical setting is the most complex situation for anyone that they can encounter. First of all, I was in quarantine, and there were people right down the hall from me who probably had COVID, with New Rochelle being the epicenter at that time. I think the reason that it's so complex is that we're not dealing with one medical professional. We're dealing with the person that gives us a CAT scan, the person that comes in and takes blood. There are so many personalities. There are so many different situations and even environments where we're wheeled into that make it complex. For me, my cell phone, texting my 2 daughters when they weren't there, was my lifeline, because they would call my doctors and they would speak to them, and people would come in and explain things to me. But in the middle of the night, when my cochlear implants weren't on and I had to put them on, or someone was hard to understand, there's a tremendous amount of frustration, not to mention if you're on any kind of painkillers or anything that's going to make you groggy. So, you know, I don't know whether it's just a matter of captioning, but it may be a matter of what do we do about this in multiple situations. I do have Otter. I know a very small amount of sign language, but you have to have people that understand what you're trying to do to connect with them. So we need something that's mainstream in the medical profession to help us, but I'm not sure what that is.
Thank you, Mary. I'm just going to add what one of my hopes and one of my frustrations has been. I had great hopes in the past for clear masks. And in fact, I think they really have not been very useful. They have muffled speech. They have not served the purpose we all hope they would serve. I hope that in the future there will be better clear masks as we continue to need masks. Let's see. Tony, were you waiting to say something more, or your hand is still up?
I'm sorry, I didn't take it down, but I
Okay.
just want to say one thing to Mary, that one of those solutions, although you have to make it universal because there are so many different disabilities, is a sticker on your wristband that shows that you're hard of hearing, so that every person that you get passed off to, that they learn to identify those stickers. But there's so many disabilities, so perhaps there's a way that that can be figured out. But yeah, it's a huge problem. So I don't know how to undo my hand. I'll try. So you could just ignore me.
I think can I answer that? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. I think one of the problems is they put a notice behind my bed that said hard of hearing. The truth is, without my cochlear implants on, I'm deaf. I'm not hard of hearing at all. So there are so many different levels of hearing loss and assumptions as to what we can and can't hear. And I am sure you agree with that. That's all.
Okay. Ruth, I see you. Unmute, say something.
I want to end this on an upbeat note. We've talked about technology from here to tomorrow. The biggest technology you can bring to this is to keep your sense of humor and not get rattled. if you can laugh and you can get other people to laugh with you, it diffuses difficult situations. When I want somebody to speak to me, I don't say, please face me when you speak. I say, don't speak until you can see the whites of my eyes. That is very specific and very useful. So if you can just remember that even if it's an emergency, try to defuse it with a little humor.
Thank you for that benediction, Ruth. I think that is a great way for us to close. I'd like to thank all of you for sharing your lessons from the pandemic, the good and the bad. And particularly thank you to Katherine and Holly for what their comments and for moderating this, for your contributions to the meeting. Thank you also to David Landsberger for being our Zoom host, and to Lauren Schechter, as always, for her wonderful captioning. Now I go to the boilerplate. I apologize for those of you who've been here before. We continue to see many new faces tonight. To learn more about HLAA, to join or to donate, or to help us continue our activities, please go to the chapter website, hearinglossnyc.org. On February 1st at 6 o'clock, representatives from InnoCaption will discuss their free captioning service for Android and iPhone, which provides free live captioning for all your telephone calls, including messages. I personally don't know much about InnoCaption. People have said great things about it. Some of our board members heard them do a presentation and said it was terrific. So I'm greatly anticipating that meeting. I look forward to seeing many of you then, and I know I'm joined by all of us on the chapter board in wishing you the best for a healthy, happy 2022. So good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.